Welcome back to the show where we stop pretending that buying a book is the same thing as reading it, and reading it is the same thing as learning from it. Today, we are diving into a classic that separates the dreamers from the doers, the talkers from the walkers, and the people who post motivational quotes on Instagram from the people who actually own the company. We are talking about Execution, the Discipline of Getting Things Done by Larry Bossidy and Ram Charan. Now, before you roll your eyes and think this is just another corporate buzzword salad, let me set the stage. You know that feeling when you and your friends sit around at 2 a.m. planning the greatest road trip of all time, or maybe a startup idea that is definitely going to kill Google, or perhaps just a commitment to finally get six-packs after July. You have the vision. The vision is beautiful. You can see the wind in your hair, you can see the billions in the bank, you can see your own abs reflecting the sun like a mirror. Then 6 months pass, you are still on the couch, your bank account is weeping, and the only thing that is six-pack related is the beverage in your hand. What happened? You had the vision, you had the strategy, what you lacked was execution. This book is basically a wake-up call that tells you that strategy is actually the easy part. Anyone can buy a whiteboard and draw some arrows. The hard part, the part that actually makes money and changes lives, is the gritty, unsexy process of execution. Bossidy and Charan argue that execution is not just a tactic, it is a discipline and a system that has to be built into your culture. It's about exposing reality and acting on it. So before we get into how to stop failing at your goals and start crushing them, do me a quick solid. You know that little subscribe button down there. It is looking very lonely. It has a strategy of being clicked, but it lacks the execution. Be the execution. Click the button, like the video, and let us get into the meat of this thing. Let us kick this off with the first core lesson, which is the myth of the visionary leader. We've been sold a lie by movies and tech magazines. We think the leader, or the CEO, or the person in charge, is supposed to be this mystical figure standing on a mountaintop, gazing into the future, thinking big thoughts while minions do the dirty work. We think leadership is about sitting in a leather chair, swirling a brandy sniffer, and saying things like synergy and paradigm shift. The authors say that is absolute garbage. They argue that leaders who pride themselves on being above the details are the ones driving companies into the ground. If you're a leader or you want to run anything, even if it's just your own household budget, you have to be immersed in the details. You cannot delegate understanding. Think of it like a restaurant owner. We've all seen those Kitchen Nightmares episodes. The owner sits at the bar, drinking wine, chatting with customers, talking about their vision for a five-star fusion menu. Meanwhile, in the kitchen, the rats are playing poker on the prep table, the chef is defrosting shrimp in a dishwasher, and the soup is cold. That owner has a vision, but they do not have execution because they think looking at the soup is below their pay grade. Bossidy and Charan say you have to have what they call robust dialogue. You need to be in the weeds. You need to know if the people you hired are actually good, or if they just interview well. You need to know if your timeline is realistic or if you're hallucinating. If you're leading a project and you don't know the specific challenges your team is facing, you aren't leading, you're just cheerleading. And cheerleaders don't win the game. They just dance on the sidelines while the team gets crushed. This leads us directly into lesson number 2, which is arguably the most painful one for most people to swallow. It's called insisting on realism. Because truth hurts, but delusion kills. The biggest enemy of execution is our collective desire to be polite and avoid conflict. In most companies, and frankly in most relationships, people lie to each other constantly. Not malicious lies, just comfortable lies. We say, sure, we can launch that product in 3 weeks, when we know it takes 6. We say, yes, I will definitely start that diet on Monday, when we know there's a pizza party on Tuesday. We pretend that our current team is capable of winning the championship when half of them don't know how to tie their shoes. The authors call this a lack of intellectual honesty. You see this all the time in the startup world. A founder has a terrible idea. It's essentially Uber for ferrets. It makes no sense, the market is zero,
but nobody wants to be the bad guy. So everyone says, "Oh, wow, that's so innovative. I love the disruption." They get funding, they hire people, they burn cash, and then 2 years later, they implode. Why? Because nobody had the guts to look at the data and say, "Hey, nobody owns ferrets, and even if they did, they don't need a taxi service." Execution requires you to look at your situation with cold, hard, brutal realism. You have to ask the question, what is the reality of the market, not what do I hope it is? What is the reality of my bank account, not what it will be when I win the lottery? If you're trying to get fit, realism is admitting that you're not going to wake up at 4 a.m. every day if you've slept in till noon for the last 10 years. Realism is building a plan based on who you actually are, not who you pretend to be on a first date. The authors say you cannot execute on a fantasy, you have to execute on reality. Now, let's move to lesson number 3, which focuses on the most volatile variable in any equation, the people process. The authors argue that of the 3 core processes, people, strategy, and operations, the people process is the most important one. You can have the best map in the world, but if the person driving the car is blindfolded and drunk, you're going to crash. The problem is most of us are terrible at picking people. We hire people we like. We hire people who remind us of ourselves. We hire people who are fun to have a beer with. We don't hire for execution. We hire for vibes. This is the equivalent of drafting a fantasy football team based on which players have the coolest haircuts. Sure, your team looks great in the photos, but you're going to lose every week. The authors emphasize that you need to link rewards to performance. It sounds obvious, but nobody does it. In most places, the person who works 80 hours a week and saves the project gets a 3% raise, and the person who spent all year forwarding emails and hiding in the bathroom also gets a 3% raise. This kills execution. The high performer realizes that effort is pointless, and the low performer realizes that incompetence is profitable. You need to have the emotional fortitude to move people out when they're not performing. I know that sounds harsh. We want to be nice. We want to be a family. But if you're keeping a mediocre person in a critical role, you are actively sabotaging the entire group. It's like having a drummer in a band who can't keep a beat. I don't care how nice he is. I don't care if he owns the van. If he can't keep time, the band sounds like garbage. You have to get the right people in the right seats. If you want to execute, you have to stop rewarding potential and start rewarding results.
This brings us to lesson number 4, the strategy process, or as I like to call it, the how. Most strategic plans are useless doorstops. They're thick binders full of pie charts and buzzwords like capture market share and become the industry leader. That is not a strategy. That is a wish list. Saying, "I want to be rich" is not a strategy. Saying, "I will rob a bank" is a strategy. It is a bad one and illegal, but at least it has a mechanism of action. Bossidy and Charan say that a real strategy must answer the question, how? How are we going to do this? If your goal is to increase sales by 20%, the strategy cannot just be sell harder. The strategy has to be, we are going to open 3 new territories, we are going to reallocate budget from print ads to digital, and we are going to train the sales staff on this specific new product. Think about modern dating. People say, my strategy is to find a soulmate. That is a goal. If your strategy for that goal is sitting in your apartment watching true crime documentaries and waiting for the pizza delivery guy to fall in love with you, that is a bad strategy. An execution-based strategy would look like this. I will delete the photos of me holding a fish. I will go to 3 social events per week where people are sober. I will actually talk to strangers instead of staring at my phone. You see the difference? One is a daydream. The other is a set of actions that can be measured and executed. The authors insist that the strategy process must be rigorous. You have to ask the uncomfortable questions. If we do this, what will the competition do? Do we actually have the money for this? Do we have the people for this? If you cannot answer the how, your strategy is just a hallucination on a PowerPoint slide. Finally, let's hit lesson number 5, the operations process. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is the bridge between the strategy and the people. Operations is basically the art of synchronization. It's making sure that the different parts of the machine are talking to each other. In many organizations, and let us be honest, in our own lives, the left hand usually has no idea what the right hand is doing. Marketing launches a massive campaign for a product that manufacturing has not finished building yet. That is an operations failure. You invite 20 people over for a dinner party, but you only have 3 plates and a bag of chips. That is an operations failure. The operations process is about breaking the long-term strategy down into short-term targets. You take that one-year goal and you slice it into quarterly objectives, monthly milestones, and weekly tasks. And here's the kicker: you have to follow through. Follow-through is the superpower of execution. How many meetings have you been in where everyone agrees on a plan, everyone nods, everyone takes notes, and then 2 weeks later, nothing has happened? Why? Because nobody followed through. Nobody sent the email asking, "Is this done?" Nobody checked the status. We assume that because we said it, it will happen. The authors equate this to a parent telling a teenager to clean their room. If you just say, "Clean your room," and walk away, the odds of that room being clean are statistically 0. If you say, "Clean your room, I'm coming back in 20 minutes to check," and if it's not done, you're losing the Wi-Fi password, suddenly you have an operations process with accountability. You have to build a rhythm of reviewing progress. You cannot wait until the end of the year to see if you failed. You need to know you're failing in week 3 so you can fix it. Execution is not a one-time event. It's a constant loop of checking, adjusting, and pushing forward. It's relentless, it's boring, and it's the only way anything ever gets done. So, let's bring this all together. What's the big takeaway here? Why should you care about a book written by 2 corporate titans? You should care because the gap between who you are and who you want to be is paved with execution. We live in a world that's obsessed with ideas. We worship the visionaries. We scroll through TikTok and see people with great ideas every 3 seconds. But ideas are cheap. Ideas are free. You can get 100 ideas for $1. The world belongs to the people who can take a mediocre idea and execute it flawlessly. It belongs to the people who can look at reality without blinking, who can hire the right people and fire the wrong ones, who can build a strategy based on how, not just what, and who have the discipline to follow through when the excitement fades away. So, Bossidy and Charan are basically telling us to stop dreaming and start doing. Stop writing beautiful lists in expensive notebooks and start crossing things off. Stop having meetings about meetings. Stop telling everyone about your big plans and let your results do the talking. It's like the old fable of the tortoise and the hare, but in the version of execution, the tortoise is not just slow and steady. The tortoise has a GPS, a nutrition plan, a support team, and a jetpack strapped to its shell, because the tortoise did the prep work. The hare just had an ego and a nap. So, here's your homework. Look at the one big thing you've been saying you're going to do for the last year, the thing you have a vision for. Ask yourself, do I have the right people around me to do it? Am I being realistic about the difficulty? Do I have a concrete plan for how to get there? And most importantly, what am I going to execute on today, not tomorrow, today, to make it happen? That's it for this deep dive into execution. If you learned something valuable, or if you just realized why your last group project was a disaster, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're here to help you turn those daydreams into dividends. Go out there and execute. See you in the next one.